Welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Mildred Ingram, R&R's editor-in-chief. And today I'm joined by founder of DUCTZ, Tom Yacobellis, who's also DUCTZ National Director. Tom, could you provide a brief overview of your background and expertise?
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Tom Yacobellis, and I started the company 38 years ago. I founded the company, I should say, 38 years ago, securing several patents on how to mechanically clean HVAC systems. As time went by, we began to expand our company operation through the process of franchising. We started putting offices throughout the country, and we got to a point where we merged with a company called DUCTZ, DUCTZ, that then was later purchased by Belfour International. Belfour International is the company that now is our mothership, and we have 50 offices around the country doing all sorts of different types of HVAC assessments and cleaning projects. And so that's the background of the company. I am actively involved in the company as the national director, and I direct the big, large national projects that go on, national disasters and national projects.
Okay. And again, thank you for being here first. Also,
you're welcome.
I want to add that. So you have had such an awesome career. I mean, just tell us your process of ownership and just to working to being a franchisor.
Well, in the very beginning, very few people believed that the mechanical system restoration was even something that was needed. And so in the beginning, I mean, 38 years ago, we had a lot of work to do to convince people that not every single air conditioning system could be replaced after a fire, flood, or water event, or after any kind of event, or that mechanical systems became quite dirty and contaminated with even just dirt and contaminants over a period of time and needed to be cleaned and restored. And so basically what we did is we started persevering and working in the industry, first with the National Air Duct Cleaners Association, and then the IICRC, and then Indoor Air Quality Association, and actually formulating and helping to grow those organizations. So I was very instrumental with the National Air Duct Cleaners Association. I was one of the founding members for the Indoor Air Quality Association, which we grew to quite a large size for the understanding of how indoor air quality impacts the indoor environment. And when through that process, what ends up happening is you find out that there are no standards, there are no guidelines, there's nothing to give to anybody to say, hey, this is how we're supposed to do it, or this is how we think you're supposed to follow it. With IICRC, which is what we're talking about today, IICRC follows the ANSI process, which is a very, very strict process for setting standards. And we'll talk a little bit more about the IICRC, I guess, in a minute. But my career has been one of volunteering quite a bit and trying to get the industry to improve and try to keep the industry professional and set the standards so that everyone's on the same playing field.
Okay. So are there any maybe tips that you would give someone that's new to the business and ownership or franchising? Like, where do you begin?
Franchising is its own animal. It is, you could run your own company and do a very, very good job at running your own company. Franchising is the process of teaching others how to do exactly what you're doing. And so the very first tip that I could give, which is one of the hardest things to do in franchising, but it is also taught by the E-Myth, in case you've ever heard about the book, the E-Myth. it is that you really need to write manuals or write your procedures down. Nowadays, a lot of people don't read much, but you still have to write down all of the procedures and operations that it takes to run your operation so that you can give them to somebody else so that they can duplicate those operations the same exact way that you're doing them, because you're now duplicating in the world of franchising, you're duplicating the very process that you actually invented.
Exactly. That's amazing. So, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of reading these days. We need to get back to that.
It would be helpful, but even in writing standards, we try to be very careful not to be too verbose because it's just the world has changed quite a bit.
Right.
When we originally put the company together, I had 12 manuals that we have written. Each manual was 100 to 125 pages long on how to run the operations and how to run the company. So became good at actually documenting and setting standards. And I was at one point the chairman of the NADCA standard for assessment, cleaning, and restoration of mechanical systems, and was on that committee for many, many years. And that standard is the key standard for how to clean mechanical systems. But the IICRC standards, the ones we're talking about today, have to do with fire, flood, mold, and wildfires, which have not been addressed at all up until this point.
Wow. So you basically touched on it. So just to kind of build off of that, could you share some notable achievements or projects that you've worked on or are currently working on?
Well, we've done a lot of projects. Probably the most notable one was, I guess, in 2021 when we had to fly over to Japan to do
Wow.
to do the cruise ship that was off the coast of the Japanese coast of Yokohama, and that was due to COVID. And in that particular case, that ship, this was just before anyone knew anything about COVID, but that ship itself had, I think it had 3,000 rooms in it, and all the air conditioning and mechanical systems, plus all the main systems, had to be cleaned within 3.5 weeks. But we've done projects. Our firm Dux has done virtually every type of project that imaginable. Hospitals are the most, hospitals and medical institutions are the most serious. We do lots of things like restoration of schools, school systems. NASA, we've done work with NASA on some of their rocket launch facilities. It goes on and on, but we like the high level projects. We've done projects where we've restored the integrity of buildings that looked like they could not be brought back. And there's also projects that we've done where buildings are being halfway built and they happen to have a fire or a flood during the construction of the building, and that all has to be brought back online. So it's a myriad of different types of projects that we come across. Along with that, our 50 so offices are every single day cleaning people's homes. So, I'm director of operations of the national team, but we have all of these offices out there cleaning people's homes, cleaning the mechanical systems, restoring mechanical systems, and cleaning mechanical systems to try to improve indoor air quality and efficiencies of the air conditioning systems. And that's our kind of our daily grind.
Goodness. I bet those are some of the most amazing before and after pictures if they exist at all.
Oh, yes, they are. They are.
Oh man. So what aspects of your work do you enjoy most and why?
Well, uh, I enjoy helping people learn how to run a business properly.
Mhm.
That is franchising. So that I do enjoy that. That takes time. People have to learn how to do things correctly. A lot of times we might be bringing on a company that's already in the duct cleaning business
Mhm.
and they want to learn more of the aspects of how to get into the commercial side and how to do how to do things properly without contaminating the building while they're cleaning the mechanical systems. So that's one aspect of what I enjoy. And then the other aspect is the actual setting of this standards, being involved. And I'm grateful that organizations like IICRC call on me to help them look at their standards that they have and say, yes, this is something that we really do, or no, this is unrealistic. You're just developing something that's not really a standard, but it's more of a best practice. So I enjoy doing that type of work too. And from time to time, I still enjoy going out on some of the larger disasters. When we have these natural disasters that come in, hurricanes in Florida and freeze outs in Texas and whatnot, that's always all hands on deck. And it requires, the whole team comes together to do those jobs. They can be quite challenging, but they're quite rewarding when they're done.
So what may be some future goals or aspirations that you currently have?
Well, the big future goal right now is with the standard that we're talking about today, which is the S590. What often happens is after a fire, a flood event, or any kind of a big event that takes place, the restoration contractors, those are the people who are going to put the building back together again. They have so much on their plate to do. They really do. They're going into a building that has just had a massive fire. Everything's covered in soot or residue, and there's probably 30 things that they have to take care of. They have to look at the electrical, the plumbing, the elevators, the flooring, the paint. And one of the things that happens is that the mechanical systems, the HVAC mechanical systems, are one of those things that have to be addressed. But they don't just the air conditioning systems don't pose just a small portion of a restoration project. They actually pose a massive portion because they're circulating the air through the entire building. And often what happens is that the air conditioning systems they become a secondary thought to getting the building back online. And the restoration contractors will be relying on industrial hygienists or people who may not be that familiar with air conditioning systems to give them some sort of scope of work of how do we get this building back together. Well, that's what the IICRC S590 does. The IICRC S590, which is the standard for HVAC assessments now, it's an ANSI level standard now, which is on the streets and it's approved and it's gone through a multi-year process, basically lays out the system of saying, hey, listen, we've looked at and smelled, by the way, we use olfactory and visual. We've looked at and the components of this HVAC system, and they fall into these three categories. These things have been so damaged that they have to be replaced. These things can be replaced, but they might cost quite a bit of money to replace them. And so you have to make a decision, not us, not the assessor, but you, Mr. Restorer, and the materially interested parties, which could be the insurance companies or the other people that are working on the project. You all should get together and try to determine whether you want to restore those things, or these things can absolutely be cleaned, but we have to use this process to clean them. And they bundle that information up in a pictorial report, and we give that information back to the restoration contractors so that they can make educated assessments on how to properly spend the money to restore the building. Because it can be quite expensive if one of these projects for restoring an entire mechanical system. And you want to make sure you're restoring something that can last. You don't want to restore a piece of equipment that's only going to last another 3 or 4 years. You want to restore something that you say, yes, you can get another 15 years of life out of this.
Right. All right. Okay.
That's partially what the S590 does.
Okay. And so switching gears now, we're going to talk about it. So The new IICRC S590, as you mentioned, standard for assessing HVAC systems following a water, fire, or mold damage event, you were the chairperson. So
That's
what was
right.
that creation process like?
Well, the creation process is very strict. It's weekly meetings for a couple of years. Uh, and in our case, I think it was 2 years. And they can go a lot longer than that. But in our case, we had a committee of about 12 people.
Mhm.
And the thing that was special about the S590 committee, which is very important to recognize, is IICRC organization made a relationship with the National Air Duct Cleaners Association that already has a standard for looking at mechanical systems. So the IICRC went to the National Air Duct Cleaners Association and said, listen, we recognize you guys have a standard for cleaning mechanical systems and even looking at them, assessing them, but you don't have a standards how to assess fire, flood, water, and mold. And so a bridge was built between the National Air Duct Cleaners Association and then IICRC. And how we did that is we had two members of the NADCA, two
Mhm.
board members sit on the committee that's the IICRC S590 committee as we develop the standard over a period of 2 years. And what you do is you write out a framework of where you want to go, a
Mhm.
structure, you get a scope, a purpose, and then you systematically go through these things one step at a time to determine, okay, is this something that we do is normally typically done in the field or by regular practicing practitioners, or is this something that is pie in the sky that we're developing? And then you take all that pie in the sky stuff and you
Mhm.
throw it out and then after that is done, you create a draft of the document, and then that draft has to go out for public review. And that public review comes back with lots of comments. Hey, we think you're missing this, or we don't like this, and you have to answer every single one of those comments when you're following the ANSI process. And we're strictly monitored during that. Every single thing has to be addressed and documented and monitored. And if you've done all of that correctly, and you've monitored your progress, you've monitored the comments, you've monitored what you're supposed to be doing, then you get to put the ANSI designation on your document, which means it was developed through that fairness guideline, so to speak. And that's what we've done. We've developed an IICRC standard through the ANSI process that is now published and on the streets.
Okay. I didn't know, I didn't notice how long the public review process even is before you get it back to make those changes. Is it
It can take, it depends on the standard. We have some IICRC standards that are 2 or 3 years in public review.
okay, okay.
So if you're affecting someone's livelihood, they have the right during the ANSI process to comment to you, hey, I think this is unrealistic, or I think this is realistic, or I think you're missing something. In our particular case, our public comment period went for probably about 9 months. I could be off a little bit, but about 9 months. We took in all the comments, we processed the comments, we put them back out again. We received back a few more comments again,
Mhm.
which this process can go on and on. And we received back a few more comments. We addressed those comments, and then we resolved it and put it to bed.
It's a very thorough process.
It is,
Amazing.
IICRC, the IICRC organization has really some of the most phenomenal people working for them, true professionals that are really amazing. I don't want to mention any names because they're all really great people, but they have some extraordinary people that help people like me through the process because it can be quite complicated.
So the S590 is not the only standard you had a hand in creating. Do you care to elaborate on that?
Right. We created the how the process started was I received a phone call from IICRC saying,
Mhm.
hey, Tommy, we have a document for structural wildfires. And we have a section in there, an HVAC section, that really needs to be written by someone with the background of HVAC restoration. Now, these are some of the best restorers in the United States writing these standards. But the air conditioning portion of, as I said, the air conditioning portion of a restoration, it really is it's a completely different mindset of what has to happen there. And so they asked me if I would get involved with the first one, which was called the structural fire. That's the IICRC S590. That's soon to be published, by the way. And that is a groundbreaking document. From there, I was also asked to write the section to bring in the HVAC section for another IICRC standard known as the S760, which is for wildfires. So structural fires is one thing, wildfires are different. They're two different standards that are being written. And during that process, we also were involved in getting the HVAC section redone in a document called the S500, which is for water loss. You know, when you have a water event inside someone's building. And then finally, there was already an HVAC section that I had wrote years ago for the last standard, the S520, which is for mold. So to put it all together, the S590 came about because people said, listen, Tom, we have a section in each one of these documents about HVAC, and they should kind of all be in one document, don't you think? That we could refer to, you know, because you've got one in the S700, one in the S760, one in the 500, one in the 520. Don't you think that they should all, the process of what we need to look at in an air conditioning system should be brought together in a single document? And I agreed, and they said, would you care to chair this document called the S590? And so the S590 is a compilation of all those documents, even though those documents have sections in them about HVAC assessment. But the S590 is its own standalone document of, hey, this is what you got to do when you go to look at an air conditioning system. And these are the things that you have to do if it involves mold or fire or structural fire, wildfire, and floods.
That's perfect, just putting it all together. So what do you feel are the benefits of this new standard?
Well, what it does is it adds a tremendous amount of fairness to the insurance industry. I think if it protects everybody, quite frankly. But the insurance industry, you know, they need to know you can't just walk into a building and say, oh, there was a fire here. Okay, we're going to replace all the air conditioning systems. And you also just can't walk in a building and say, oh, there was a fire here. And you know what? I don't think anything was affected. Let's just turn all the air conditioning systems back on. There has to be a process of reporting back, you know, data that is trustworthy, so that the restoration contractor, the building owner, the facility owner, we call them materially interested parties, the insurance people, that everybody can agree upon, okay, this is what we can do. We have the following options. I want to make one point about the S590 that's, I think, important here. And that is, in years past, one of the things that has happened is that people who have done HVAC assessments, they tend to, the HVAC assessor, in some cases, they tend to get into starting to talk about indoor air quality and the impact the indoor air quality is going to have on the building while they're doing their assessment. The S590 is devoid of that completely. It makes no judgment on indoor air quality. That is a completely different trade. That's the industrial hygienists or the indoor environmental professionals. And the S590 makes a very special point of making sure that those determinations are left for others to make. The S590 just says, hey, we looked at your system. This is restorable. This is non-restorable. And these are the methods that you can use to try to restore the system. And we give that information to the restorer, and then they can choose to give it to whoever they want to. And so it kind of sets a nice even tone for everyone to get on the same page and agree on what needs to be done.
Okay, and I bet there's a lot of testing involved in that process too, to make sure that everything.
The type of testing that we do in the S590 is when you come to a duct, when you open up a piece of duct work, we're not doing testing like indoor air quality testing, like you might imagine, like laser particle testing, or sampling for microbial contamination. What we're doing is we're seeing if a surface is cleanable. Okay. So you open up a duct and you have all of this residue on it from a fire, let's say, and you try to clean it initially, but after you wipe it off, it's still dirty because the residue is stuck to the duct. Well, that requires what's called damp wiping, a second process completely. And that's what the S590 does. It says, listen, just going in and vacuuming out the dirt alone here on this particular project is not going to work. You're going to have to follow up with a damp wiping. That's the testing that we'll do. We test to see what it takes to restore the system.
Okay. So as we near the end of the interview, or before we leave, I'm curious, what would you say is one of the biggest career-related lessons you've learned up to this point?
One of the biggest career-related lessons, well, perseverance and persistence is, there's a lot of people. There are, as in any business, there's lots of companies that want to cut corners and not do it correctly, or want to just get in and do the minimum amount of work. And that will always be in every trade. But perseverance and persistence and taking the time, taking years to write a standard and set a standard to make sure that there is some sort of record of how to do it correctly, I think is important. And those things take a lot longer to do. They take a lot longer to get on the streets, but those do become the trusted documents by industry, whether it's the insurance industry or adjusters or the restorers themselves or the courts. When things finally go to court, that what they rely on is they rely on these standards. So when litigation occurs, the first thing that people do is they start going to the standards to see how it was supposed to be done. And I think that's probably the most important part of trying to keep my career moving forward.
That is so true. Tom, thank you so much for your time and insight. Before we go, where can listeners connect with you or learn more about these new standards, or just this new standard?
Well, this new standard is available at the IICRC.org website, and that's where all the standards are. So I would just encourage everyone to go to the IICRC.org site for the S590, which is now published, and very soon for the S700. But they also should go to the National Cleaners site, NADCA, NADCA.org. They should go to the NADCA site also to have the assessment, cleaning, and restoration standard for cleaning ductwork as well. Those are the two key standards that our industry will run on for the next 10 years, I'm sure.
Okay, Tom, thank you. And for more insights on restoration remediation and the people behind it all, like Tom, visit our website, rnrmagonline.com. Follow us on Apple or Spotify. If you haven't yet, be sure to follow the podcast to keep up with our latest episodes like this one, and give us a quick review and rating. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, so we invite you to follow us there too. This has been R&R's Ask the Expert. Thank you for listening.